Is war a trigger for you? I think for most people, war can be a trigger just because of the fact that we are human and compassionate, and we don't like the idea of people suffering, and especially innocent people. So at the moment, with things that are going on, no doubt it's triggering you on some level. So outside of the normal human compassion reasons, sometimes, and you might recall, have you ever, for example, when you've heard a kind of war type siren sound, like an emergency siren, or when you've heard aeroplanes or jets or maybe even helicopters flying overhead, especially when it's quite low or loud? Have you ever had this kind of reaction where it's almost like PTSD, or it's almost like you want to hide under a table, or even if it's just for a split second where something sinks within you? I don't know, I've had that before. And there's the feeling of that is like almost like you've experienced that before. So perhaps in another lifetime, you have been under some kind of war situation. And outside of that, through your parents' DNA, through your ancestry line, so much is carried through, including wounds and triggers and war energy, or the reaction to war. And there's trauma there, and then so that's running through your bloodstream, through your DNA, through your body system. So just wanted to bring that forth because sometimes it's difficult to watch or hear about these things. And I know when I was younger, I never understood. And like most children, they're like, what is war? Why do people fight? And especially, angel type people as well. And we just want peace, right? With everything. And so the war is a greater expression of smaller conflicts. It's like the macrocosm of the microcosm of everybody goes through small, lower level conflicts, and some of those, and there's a spectrum of that, some of that is extreme. Whether it's between two people or a bunch of people or whatever the case may be. Or sometimes in an area or country. So there are so many levels of this. And we all have our stories and connections. Perhaps you had relatives that were soldiers. Perhaps you have friends who are refugees. Perhaps humanitarianism is really important for you. So there's something going on for each person on another level. So have a reflection of that. And the reason why this comes through is I had thoughts coming to me this morning, and it followed a pattern and an emotional kind of pattern. And each of us will have our own version of that. And so when you hear a news item or see something, no doubt there's this dot-to-dot connection, and you can run it through your whole historic line, whether that's physical or energetic, emotional, mental, through your bloodlines, or past lives, all of it. So even just from this lifetime, you connect the dots. So for example, for myself, when I was a teenager, my parents split up, and my dad moved to Croatia, and the war happened, and so he was living there during the war, and he would be on his balcony and see fighter jets flying over, and those fighter jets would then bomb a place that's just a 4-hour drive away, where my husband's family are actually from, because we both have a Croatian background, and a place called Kupres, and that place was extremely demolished. And so years ago, I went and visited that place with my husband, and we were walking along and seeing all the war-torn buildings. And one day we went for a walk, and we had no idea. We went for a walk across this beautiful fields, and my husband's uncle was screaming at us like hysterical, because apparently it was a minefield and there were still mines there that hadn't been, that had just been left. So we, of course, freaked out. So there's that, and that worry as a teenager of my dad living in the war. And then at some point in my 20s, I'd moved temporarily to a part of Australia, and this war was going on, and I'd seen on the TV the Kosovo refugees, and it was really heartbreaking to me. And it's just like I was at that point where I'd finished my uni and I'd wanted to make that change, and I was really interested in humanitarianism, and it really pulled to me. So I went to a meeting where they were looking for volunteers from Australia. I went to the meeting and I really wanted to go because it was just following my heart. I really wanted to go and be a volunteer to Kosovo. But as it turned out, I wouldn't have been accepted due to my background being Croatian, so conflict of interest, and so I couldn't go. And so I did spend a few years looking for jobs in humanitarianism, just anything I could do, even just office work, and I just couldn't get a job anywhere in it. I couldn't get sort of a foot in, and as it turned out, your destiny goes in another direction, but I know where that comes from. Interestingly, with the Kosovo thing, when I was growing up in New Zealand, I did Croatian folklore dancing at a cultural institution called the Yugoslav Club back in New Zealand, because at that time Croatia was under Yugoslavia. But while I was dancing at that club, as I grew older, from a child, through to a teenager, the war started happening. And then when the war happened, there was great divide and politics within that club. And then that club split up into factions. And at that point, I stopped dancing because I really couldn't stand the war at politics and the way it divided people and how horrible people can be. One of the dances that I did was actually the Kosovo dance. And so, of course, when there were war and refugees, it really kind of struck me. I had worn the costume. Kosovo at some point had been under the Kingdom of Serbia, and before Croatia became independent, Croatia was part of this conglomerate of what was called Yugoslavia. So even when I hear, for example, about NATO, it is a word that I heard a lot while my dad was living in Croatia, and when a war was happening. And I remember going to a protest, stop the war in Croatia. I was like 16 or something. So, yeah, war is uncomfortable. It is, and I just always really feel for refugees, like most of us, right? Our hearts go there for the children, the families. Because no matter what's going on in our lives and how hard our lives might seem, one of the worst things anyone could go through is war, really. So, or having to flee a country under those conditions, and the trauma that people will be going through. I think a lot of people are handling it really well, considering, and especially when children are involved. And let's remember that children pick up on vibes. So young little children that don't know what's going on, and they're, sitting in halls, freezing in jackets, or at train stations or whatever's happening, not knowing what's going on there. They're not at home anymore. Maybe they've heard or seen something, or maybe not. And even if they don't, they're picking up on the vibe of the mass. And us as sensitives are for sure picking up on the vibe, even without seeing anything or hearing anything or switching off the news for a bit. We're receiving those signals from both sides, from all angles. Interestingly, while on that Kosovo topic, one day, quite a few years ago, I was at an event, and I was picking up a vibe from somebody, as what sometimes happens. This person sort of just glowed to me, and as it turned out, their younger brother who had passed away wanted to bring a message to this person, and I didn't know this person, so I approached them, started talking, and I asked her, she didn't mind I was receiving a message, and she wanted to hear it. So the first word that he'd said was water, and as it turned out, he'd drowned when he was younger. And then he just kept bringing all these messages through, and one of the messages was he gave me the vision of refugees walking along, like walking for days, or for a long period of time, just heaps of refugees. And as it turned out, this person I was talking to was a Kosovo refugee from back then. So there you go, that's 360, isn't it? Everything happens for a reason, and we are on earth at this time for a reason. So if you're struggling, and maybe you're having great days and not so great days, whatever it is for you, and it's been a little bit of time now, so as you're going through things, just remember that it's oftentimes coming from, or not sometimes coming from, a deeper place. And so I just invite you to reflect on that and to go deeper and follow and see where that road takes you. Because when you draw those connections, you're more embodied in yourself, and you more so are receiving the messages, the knowings, and you more so are able to heal on a way deeper level and transmute the energies. And I'm talking foremost for yourself and your personal energetic or beyond time, space, dimension background, as well as everything happening on earth and why you are here, because we are all here for a reason. We're all signed up for this. And yeah, we've had so many times, right, where we're like, why on earth? Why would I come here? But that is how it is. So if you think of the macrocosm of what's happening now as speaking to your microcosm of what is within you, that your small world within you, or large world, however you look at it, and that it's all reflective of each other. And so a trigger from the outer connects to your inner self. And so just allow that to come up into your consciousness and see where that brings you. Maybe journal it out, or go for a walk, or spend some time reflecting on it and see what comes up for you, because we've all got stories. And I'd love to hear yours. So please reply with your story, your background, or just what's coming up for you lately. What does war bring up for you? What are your frustrations? What are you feeling? What are your sensitivities? Because you might be feeling like, how do I deal with this when this comes up? And it's breathe, allow it to process, release. And if there is something you can do on some level, do that and follow that. And beyond all, just allow it to teach you, to guide you, to lead you to the new way. Because there is a new paradigm birthing on earth. There's a new way of being. And we're getting there. And these are hints and signs, and we've had so many. So I know that sometimes the darkness can be overwhelming and overtake everything, or allow, but it's seeing beyond the box or beyond this kind of matrix system that we're in and stepping out of it, because we know we're so much more. We're not, if we were a bird, we weren't meant to be locked in a cage or in a world of cages. It's time to unlock. And that means unlocking, the doorways to your inner self and your connection to the higher realms, because that's where we're from. We're from something more. And with that, you are more, so much more. So allow that to guide your way and to really connect with that, because that is truth. You are more, so much more. Allow that to guide your way.